Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Tech 90. Today, I got myself, Greg Brunts, and I also got James McIntyre joining me this time. So, got some exciting information today regarding the new MultiPRO dual fuel coils and the wired controller. I think you're going to find that those are excellent additions to the GREE offering that we sell. So, our agenda today is first, we're going to cover why we're so excited about getting this info to you. Then we're going to run a hands-on video showing the new coils. Then we'll come back and chat with you live and answer any questions up to that point. After that, we'll run another hands-on video covering the wired controller. Then we'll finish up with another live Q&A session. We encourage you to get into the conversation. As a reminder, if you have questions or comments at any time during this broadcast, use the question mark icon to the right of the screen and send them our way. We'll answer any relevant questions until we run out of time. Again, this is your opportunity to connect with us and become more comfortable with the latest in GREE comfort. So let's get started. Why are we so excited to get this information out to you? Well, James, I'm going to turn that one over to you because I think you got some good views of why we're excited about this. So,
Oh, well, yeah, with the dual fuel coil. I mean, first off, we have ultra heating equipment that gives you full heating down to minus 22 degrees. So, we've got the best possible heat pump out there for heating performance. So I'm really excited with having a dual fuel system. People wanting to use a gas furnace, have that as a backup, for when it gets really cold. I'm excited to see that a bunch of furnaces not actually having to work, that they can just use heat pump heating the entire time. But I'm also excited about the furnace not coming on until, January or February or something like that. I'm also excited about the rebates that are available in some of these areas, in relation to heat pumps up in like the North Midwest, for example. A lot of rebates associated with them, but at the same time, people are like, okay, that's great. I get a rebate, but then, that electric heat comes on in the winter, runs all winter long. Eventually I start giving that rebate back to whoever gave it back to, gave it to me in the first place, right? You get an energy rebate from the power company, and then you slowly but surely pay that back over time. If you've got electric heat on, if you're using a standard heat pump. But with ours, with this dual fuel coil, it gives you that option. It gives you the option to have two true heat sources. But then this, because this is a multi-pro system, it's capable of doing multiple zones. That means that gives us just an enormous amount of options from an application standpoint. That can we can run the gas furnace, for example, for the common areas or what have you. But then also have ductless units for the or bedrooms or whatever, or we can have two furnaces with two coils with one outdoor unit, and then you could use heat pump on one, furnace on the other, and swap them back and forth or whatever. I mean, it gives you all kinds of options. So that's got me excited about that. What about you, Greg?
well, I think those are interesting points, but I think another big thing to think about here is MultiPro. I think there's a lot of people that I think would be really seriously interested in MultiPro because of its heating capabilities. But we were limited in the market in that there's a lot of homes out there that are existing homes that already have gas furnaces installed in them. And in order to do a multi-pro, up until now, you would have to remove that whole furnace and put in an air handler and effectively just decommissioning the gas lines that went to that furnace. This gives us the ability to let them have that gas furnace, let them have them fuel runs that they already had, and be able to add multi-pro systems into it. And I think it's going to be especially important in areas where the only fuel available is propane, and propane, as we well know, can fluctuate in price quite drastically. And in a lot of applications, the multi-pro is going to be significantly more efficient to run than running a gas furnace on propane. So I think it opens up a lot of doors for us and a lot of doors for our contractors to be able to be more competitive with this essentially cold climate heat pump, because that's what this thing's, the ability of this thing to be able to heat all the way down to minus 22 degrees. And James, you're absolutely right. You know, you're going to have a furnace that's going to be sitting there not running for a big portion of the winter, which, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then again, you also have two sources of heat. So if the if the furnace would malfunction, as long as the blower still works, you still have a heat pump you can run.
Right.
If the MultiPRO system would have a problem for some reason, you still have the gas furnace to fall back on.
Right.
So you've
Or,
got literally got two sources of heat.
right. Well, not only that, or if you had, if you did use a standard, MultiPRO, like in North Dakota, you know, um, you do get that reduction capacity over time, that kind of thing. As it gets colder, it does reduce in capacity. It still outperforms most heat pumps, but you do get that reduction in capacity, and then you can have that gas furnace kick on, right? So you have that, but you have this reduction in capacity. You have the gas furnace kick on, which means you no longer need that coil's capacity, right? You no longer need like that 3-ton worth of capacity that the coil might require, but then you can shift that capacity to other zones that you have available. So, you can shift that to wall mounts or other ducted units, for example, and you've got that extra capacity now could go over there. It could go over there, and you're using the gas furnace, and you're distributing, hot air throughout the spaces and all that, but you've also got the heat pump. So, in this case, it's not dual fuel either or, it's dual fuel both.
Well, I mean, James, I just want to kind of comment to what you're saying there to make sure everybody understands what you're saying there.
Okay.
Essentially, if the gas furnace takes over because it's that cold out, and we're now running that furnace on the fuel, now you've got the full capacity of that heat pump to be able to go into the other zones if you're doing a multi-zone, MultiPRO system, and where you added a wall mount, say in a bedroom or something like that. Instead of having to split that outdoor unit capacity between the coil on the furnace and that wall mount, we're able to shift more of that capacity strictly to the wall mount. So,
Right.
I mean, and I think just a little clearer. I'm just trying to be a little more clear of exactly what we're saying there. And I totally agree with you. It opens up a lot of doors.
Mm-hmm.
I
Right.
mean,
Well,
you have that one room that's always been cold in the wintertime.
mm-hmm.
So you put in a MultiPRO system with the dual fuel coil, and you add a wall mount or a console or a cassette or whatever to that room. So now that room is finally warm throughout the winter. I mean, it just opens up a lot of doors here.
Right. And then from a rebate standpoint, one of the interesting things about this is normally when you're talking about a rebate on a heat pump or furnace system, but let's just say on a heat pump system, your SEER2 rating, your HSPF2 rating is your rating, right? There's no way to adjust that. There's no way to get around it. That's what you end up with, right? But if you take a look at like our submittals or on the HRI website, if you were to add a single wall mount unit, for example, right? If you added a single wall mount unit, because we rate these as, or HRI rates these as ducted systems, mixed, non-ducted, and ducted, and then non-ducted, right? There's 3 different options there. If I have just a ducted system, I would have like an 18.5 or up to an 18.5 SEER2, right? However, if I add one wall mount unit, one ceiling cassette, one, non-ducted unit, right, that takes it from 18.5 to 20.75. If I add one non-ducted unit.
That's huge.
So if let's say it qualifies for a rebate at 18.5 SEER2, but qualifies for a higher rebate at, if it's above 20, for example, now you added one wall mount unit. So you get that zoning capability out of it. You can add that to your master bedroom, for example. You get that zoning capability. You get all the benefits that come with having zoning, but you also maybe push that, up a tier on the rebate program. So now you have a dual fuel system. It's fully inverter driven. All those benefits that come along with it, but also you might be qualifying for a massive rebate as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. So before we run the video, a couple little another comment I want to make. So when I did the video, obviously it's pre-recorded video. When I did the video, I did not know the model numbers to the coils. So as the video is playing, you will see it added into the video screen. You'll see all the different model offerings that we have for the. So just so you know, while you're watching the video, please pay attention to those model numbers if you want to know what the model numbers are. And we're getting ready to release them soon here. They're not on our website yet, but again, that's coming soon. So I just want to make sure if you don't go out to the website looking for literature on it just yet, because we haven't actually got them on there yet. So, but with that, let's go ahead and run the video. Don't forget to submit your questions. Like I said, we've said many times in these Tech 90s, we want to hear from you. We want you engaged. We want questions. We'd be happy to answer them. So with that, let's go ahead and run the video, and we'll come back and do some live Q&A once the video is ran on the MultiPRO coils. Welcome to another Tech 90. Today, we got something exciting to share. We have a new product offering to join in our GREE equipment line. We are now going to have the ability for you to take any gas furnace and be able to hook up a MultiPRO standard or a MultiPRO alter to that system. And out of the box, it's got everything you need right on the front of that coil. So with that, let's kind of jump into what this coil is, what the offering is, and how you would go about installing it. So I want to focus your attention more toward this smaller coil here. I've got what would be the 2-3 ton offering, and then the 4 or 5 ton offering. Don't quote me on that, because it may actually be a 2 ton, a 3 ton, a 4 ton, and a 5 ton separate coils. These are prototypes, so I can't really tell you if I know the exact model number scheme, but they're not released just yet, but they're coming real soon. So just kind of an FYI with that too. So just so you know, we just wanted to get you right off the bat here, get you in tune with them, know they're coming, know the capabilities of them, how to hook them up, and all that good stuff. So the way they come out of the box, I've added some other things to this, but you're going to have this control box that's already mounted to the front of the coil. And again, like I said, these are prototypes. So one of the things that we changed once we got the prototypes, it was like, that might be an issue with venting on some of the gas furnaces. So we had them change it up. So on the production coils, this can be easily moved to the right-hand side or the left-hand side. You will have pre-punched holes there. The wiring is all plug and play. It's all color-coded. There's no way you're going to goof that up. So if you want it over on the left side or the right side, it's not going to be hard to move at all. Then that plug that had the hole plugged on the side, you'll be able to pop that plug out, put it in the front, and move the control box to the right side or left side. So also with that, it's already set up to do 24-volt control and also tie in with the communicating MultiPRO unit. So before we actually get into all the controls, I thought we'd talk a minute with the coil that we have opened up here. So talk about what's featured inside the coil and what you're unplugging if you move it, or even if you don't unplug them or move it or not. So let's move over to this larger coil. So on this larger coil, you're going to have multiple different thymistors in it. So like all MultiPRO has an inlet and an outlet temperature sensor. So right here, right on the manifold, is your inlet temperature sensor. Then right on the suction manifold, you will have your outlet temperature sensor. The other thing that they're going to do is you're going to have a supplier temperature sensor that's going to be after the furnace, before the coil, and you're going to have another sensor that is an outlet air temperature sensor after the coil. So that's all the temperature sensors. Then lastly, you're going to have the EEV that's up in there. The good part about that is the EEV is far enough away from any brazing you're doing. I don't think you have to worry about overheating the valve or anything like that. But I will say, and it's kind of hard to see, I think we can probably get the camera zoomed in here to take a look. Kind of push that over to the side a little bit. Let me pull this off. I do want to point these out. There's one here and there's one up there. So those are inline strainers. We want to be really careful and make sure that we're flowing nitrogen when we're brazing, because we don't want to plug up those strainers. So you got one on the inlet going into the EEV and one leaving the EEV. So make sure you're flowing nitrogen when you're brazing on this thing on both lines. So with that, let's move back to the controls and the functionality to it, and we'll go from there. All right, so getting into the wiring and the controls of this when you're doing a dual fuel application, first thing I want to point out is, just so you know, the board in here where you're going to be doing your thermostat connections is no different than the new 24-volt adapter, which we're going to be talking about shortly as well. But I have one of those new 24-volt adapters here, and it was just easier because I already got the other one hooked up that I can point out what you'd be doing here. So coming from your furnace in your 24-volt power from your furnace, your R and your C, you will have to run that up here to TC. That'll be your common from your furnace, and your TR would be your R from your furnace. Then your C and your R here would be going to your thermostat connections, so you'd have 24-volt power to your thermostat at all times, and also give you your R that you need at your thermostat for your switching mechanism to go through the thermostat switching to turn different things on. The only other thing you're going to hook up on this board is going to be Y, and we now have a B terminal, so that energizes the reversing valve. Remember, the reversing valve on GREE equipment is energized in the heating mode, not in the cooling mode. So the only connections, again, just to kind of refer, you're going to put your 24 volts from your furnace, which is going to be at TC and TR. You're going to have your C and your R going out to your thermostat. And then you're going to have your Y and your B. You don't need to hook up G or dry or auxiliary or W1, because your auxiliary heat is going to be your gas furnace. Now, keep in mind, again, since we're doing dual fuel, you have to have a dual fuel capable thermostat that is not going to send out a signal and try to run the heat pump and the gas furnace at the same time. Because your gas furnace connections, your W connection per se, is not coming to this control box at all. It's going directly to that furnace. So the only thing that's going to stop that furnace from running when the heat pump is running is that thermostat that's not going to let that happen. Okay, so very important that you use a dual fuel capable thermostat and you set it up for dual fuel operation, letting that thermostat know in the setup of the thermostat that it has a heat pump with a gas furnace. So normally when you do that, then the thermostats themselves will not send out a signal to both at the same time. Now, you have a G terminal on here as well. Again, you don't need to do that. Your G terminal will be going directly to your furnace. Now, if your furnace is multiple speed, in other words, you would get a higher fan speed off of Y than you would G, you could always sister Y there and bring it down to your furnace as well. So when you get that Y call, the furnace board also gets the Y call, and it's going to ramp the blower up higher than the G speed. Depends on what furnace you're using, so keep that in mind. Again, this 24-volt adapter here is the same board that's in the dual fuel kit that's already installed. You don't have to add one, it's already in there. I just wanted to be able to show you the connections. So with that said, I can get rid of this, and we can go back to the board here. So one of the things that we have to make sure we set up, and let me point out one other thing here. So the transformer I got hanging here, that's just simulating your furnace transformer, because that's the transformer you'd be using is off the furnace. So that's not real. And then my little switching mechanism I have here for acting as a thermostat. So for all you guys out there that have to have one of those fancy Zebra stats, I built this for about 12 bucks. So just so you know. Anyway, so the biggest thing you got to know
like any other MultiPRO system, one of those indoor units is going to be dedicated to master. So when you set this up, do you want this to be the master? And the way you do that is the P10 code. So, and this will be in the manual, so I don't expect you to memorize all this. But in the P10 code, so if I just go in here and hit enter, and then I can scroll through the P codes. There's P10, I hit enter again, it's set for 01. Meaning, the minute I power this up, this becomes the master. If it's 00, it's not going to become the master. So, the reason why I'm pointing that out is because let's say you're adding this in or you've done some changes or whatever, the MultiPRO system has to have a designated master indoor unit. And the error code you would get is the fact that you have no master indoor unit. So you have to make sure you set one of those pieces of indoors. Now you could have a gas furnace and a high wall, and you can make either one of those the master. It's just, I'm just pointing out to you, you have to have one as a master. And if you want this to be the master, P10 is the parameter you need to set so you can get it to become the master, okay? If you don't want it to become the master, leave it 00 and it won't, okay? The only other thing that we really got to worry about setting here is the P03, which is your time delay. Go in the enter again. P03, I hit enter. So you got 00, and then you just use the up down keys. You got 01, 02, 03, and 00. 00 is going to be 0 minutes of, meaning heat pump operation shutdown, not blower. Remember, you're not controlling your blower, okay? So be very careful with that because it depends on the time delay for your blower too. Remember, G's not coming here. So I would be setting it probably at 00, so I have a 0 minute off delay. But 01, I believe, is going to be 5 minutes. 02, I believe, is going to be 10 minutes. And 03, I believe, is going to be 20 minutes. So, and I'm a little unsure on that because, again, these are production. The 24-volt adapters are production. And the way they had it set up on the previous adapter, we changed that a little bit in the design setup of doing the dual fuel coil and for the 24-volt adapter. And I believe that's what we expect that we wanted the time delays to be. So I would keep it at 00. Make sure it has no time delay because it depends on your blower. Even if your blower has a 3-minute time delay off or a 2-minute time delay off or whatever, there's really no reason to be running that heat pump anymore. Let's go ahead and when we lose that call, let's just shut it down, okay? So that's the only real settings you need to do. There is other settings that are built into it because, as I said, it is the same as the 24-volt adapter. But since we're using it in the dual fuel application, we don't need to set that. And that's why you'll see all these different thermostat wires hanging off of here because I'm going to use this to simulate doing a 24-volt adapter as well. So again, back to repeating one more time, you're going to put your 24-volt power from your furnace. That's going to go to TC and TR. Then you're going to have your R and your C going to your stat. You're going to have your B and your Y, and that's it. And then you're going to have your D1 and D2 connection right here. That D1 and D2 connection is going to go out to your outdoor unit in that daisy chain fashion, just like we've done with MultiPRO before. Remember, from the outdoor unit, you got a D1 and a D2. It goes to the first indoor unit. It goes to D1 and D2 there. It daisy chains to the next indoor unit until you run out of indoor units, however many you have. It may be a 1-to-1. You can do MultiPRO, dual fuel with the heat pump, and it'd be a 1-to-1 setup. It doesn't have to have multiple indoor units. So I'm really excited about it because we've been needing to go with this dual fuel for quite a while. I think this is going to be a game changer for you guys when it comes to MultiPRO. And you know, especially if you've got areas where you got a lot of propane heat and stuff, and maybe that customer's furnace is only a year old. Maybe it's 2 years old and they don't want to replace that furnace, and but they got an outdoor heat pump system that they really like to upgrade to a newer one, or maybe they got air conditioning with it right now, and they're really looking to have 2 sources of heat, because especially with propane, because the price fluctuates so bad. So with that said, that's really all the setup you need to do. So we'll kind of go through some of this. Your OB terminal, just like any other heat pump thermostat, when you switch that thing to heat, the system switch is what's energizing the reversing valve. So if I turn this switch on to energize the B terminal, that is no different than having the system switch on the heat pump on heat. So then if I go, pull this meter around here, if I go between C and B, you got 27 volts. And then if I get a heat pump call, which I'll go ahead and give it that, just turned on, I've got 24 volts to Y, and we don't have it on camera, and I don't have it refrigerantly piped, so I'm not going to leave it on more than a couple seconds, but I just turned on the condenser we tied it to. So I do have it tied to a MultiPRO Ultra, but I don't have it piped yet, and I don't want to leave it on. So soon, in one of our live broadcasts, we will have this dual fuel coil set up on a gas furnace along with the new MultiPRO Ultra, the GMV6 version, and we're going to do a wall mount with that, and we're going to do an air handler with that. And then we're going to have another training with it all functional, and you guys will actually be able to see it in operation with it running and be able to switch it over like as if it got a gas heat call and all of a sudden show up. Now, I'm not going to put gas heat to it or fuel to it. I'll have fuel in this building, but I am going to get this all functional up and running for you guys so you can see how to do it. So one other thing, a couple other things to point out here, I guess. This little green jumper right here, or green plug with the white jumper, that is your condensate overflow switch. It comes jumped out from the factory. If you're going to put a float switch on the condensate drain or emergency flow pan or whatever you're doing there, all you got to do is you can unplug this and then just cut the jumper, wire one side of your float to one side of that jumper, the other side of the float to the other side of the jumper, plug it back in. It will actually give you an L3 air code if for some reason your condensate float is tripped, and it won't allow the heat pump to run in cooling mode. Shouldn't affect it in heating mode. So other than that, there's really nothing else you need to do or tie into that board. And again, you're just going to put your 120 volts to it. You can grab that right off your furnace. That's right here. You'll see this little power cord coming up. So you can grab your 120 volts off the furnace and just run it up into your coil here. And then you're going to have, like I said, your D1 and D2 connections. Set your 2 P codes you need to set. Get your dual fuel thermostat all wired up, and you should be good to go for MultiPRO dual fuel heating. So I think that was pretty much it. I got Daniel kind of hiding in the background on me. Daniel, am I missing anything? Is there anything I forgot?
No, that's it.
I mean, it's really, that's the whole idea here, was to make it as simple as possible.
Yep.
And again, the only thing that Daniel and I, when we first looked at these, we didn't like the idea that the only option was the control panel on the front. So with that, they had to make those wires a little longer for us, and then give us pre-punched holes on the sides so that the box can be moved to the left or the right. That way it can't interfere with your piping, if you know, your flue piping, if that's what's going to be in your way, which, especially if you got a condensing furnace, that could really be an issue. Or even an 80% furnace, depending on, you know, what kind of clearance you got.
And just a reminder on that, the P03 and P10 is only to your setting.
Correct. So I guess there is one other thing I didn't fail to mention. We'll talk about it now. So if I can get Nick to bring that camera around for us to the larger coil. These are multi-position coils, so I wanted to point that out as well. This coil, it comes set up horizontal left. And as I said, Daniel and I already had these all apart and kind of messing with them. So we've already converted it. That's why the drain pan's on the right.
Yep.
But it was really kind of simple, wasn't it, Daniel?
Yeah, we just slide it out and then move the pan over, slide it back in. The only thing that we ran into, because these are prototypes, was the bracket on the other side. So we just moved that over and had to drill a hole. And so on the production model, they'll actually have the space there already set up so you can move that bracket over.
Well, and I'll tell you guys, and I've said it for years, if you're going to do a horizontal application, obviously, most likely you're taking that up into an attic or you're taking it into the crawl space. You rarely do that inside a house where you can stand in nice comfortably and do it. Make sure you do that before you take it up into the attic, before you take it up into the crawl space.
Yeah.
Know which way you're going to be laying that coil, on the left side or the right side. Move that drain pan over and get all that done before you ever take it down in the basement, or not basement, crawl space or attic. It'd be so much easier. Because the one thing I will tell you is, GREE is proud of their metal. These coils are not light. So you're going to want to have that all prepped and ready to go. And I've seen guys trying to do that pan change once it's already installed, and you're fighting it, you're bucking the drain pan. It
makes it difficult.
So much easier if you just do that before.
The other thing that you taught me was go ahead and put the coil back in here before. Don't just leave the coil out and then install this case, because then you may torque it and then this thing won't slide in there smoothly.
Yes. So what Daniel was saying there was, if you're converting it, you convert it, you put the coil back in, you take coil all up there, and then you get it all hooked up to your ductwork. Don't leave the coil out. Take the box up, get it all installed, and then try to slide the coil in. Because if you do that, chances are without the coil in there, you may rack the case. Mm-hmm. And then when you go to try to shove the coil in there, it don't want to go in there because the case is racked, and it may not even be evident to your eye. Yep. It could just be racked enough that you're like, why ain't this thing going in here?
If you've already attached it, taped it, mastic, all of that, then you got a big issue.
Yeah, you're not going to be happy. So you're much better off to do this ahead of time. Get it all ready. And I know the coils are not light with that coil in there, but it's not going to be that much lighter just having the coil. So GREE's proud of their coils, and they're proud of the way they do things, and I actually like the way they do it too. It's hard to see, but you can kind of see in here. I like the fact that they strap every single one of those distributors in place.
Yeah.
There's no vibration here. That's not happening. We're not going to have a pipe sitting there wiggling and causing us a leak. Same with up here. It's all strapped in place. They do a great job of making sure things are tight.
Yeah, they do.
So, yeah. So with that, like I said, the submittals will be coming out soon, and they'll be fully released before long. I'm hoping October-ish, where we'll actually be releasing them. So, exciting things coming.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let's jump right into the questions. James, you want to tackle the first question?
Yeah, sure can. Okay, so we do have some good questions. As a reminder, your questions and comments make this a lot more valuable. I mean, we can just listen to ourselves talk all day. I mean, we do that every single day anyway. But let's take a look at the first question. Are we building a gas furnace? Also, does the gas heat kick in on a droop feature or a set outdoor air temperature? So I'll take the first part of that. We are not building a gas furnace. Although who knows what the future holds, right? No, we are not building a gas furnace. The way this is rated as multi-zone equipment in the first place. So, I mean, those would be the efficiency ratings that are used. There is nothing to prevent this from working with just your favorite gas furnace. So similar to our flex equipment, using it with a gas furnace, there's nothing to prevent it from working with pretty much any model of gas furnace, a forced air gas furnace. Greg, would you like to take the second part?
Sure,
Or
absolutely.
droop
So
or
the next question was, does the gas heat kick in on a droop feature or a set outdoor air temperature? So keep in mind, the MultiPRO system is a fully communicating system. But in order to do dual fuel and tie that in with a gas furnace, that is why the Coil has the control box that it has, so that you can choose and use whatever your favorite dual fuel capable thermostat is. So then that part of it is not communicating. It's a 24-volt signal that is being sent to that control box on that coil. So the functionality as to whether the heat pump's going to run or the gas furnace is going to run and where your cutoffs are going to be, all of that falls into the setup features of that particular thermostat. So some things to keep in mind is you're not going to be having a means for the thermostat to know what the outdoor temperature is unless that thermostat you're adding an outdoor air temperature sensor. You're not going to be able to tag into the MultiPRO system and get the outdoor temperature. So you can do that. And another way it can be done is many thermostats now are Wi-Fi capable. So if you have a Wi-Fi capable thermostat, it can use the local weather channel to know what the outdoor temperature is. A lot of these thermostats, you can go in there and set a balance point to say at this temperature, let's say it's 0 degrees. If it falls below 0 and you've got you want the gas furnace to take over, you can absolutely set that up to where that below 0 only the gas furnace runs and above 0 only the heat pump runs. I'm not saying that's the best way to set it up. I'm just saying that that is an option. Keep in mind that the MultiPRO systems, the outlet temperature, one of the biggest complaints you get from heat pumps is it blows cold air. But with the MultiPRO systems, the way they're designed, the way they do, they have outlet temperatures very near what a gas furnace would be. So that complaint of the blowing cold air, I don't think you're going to get with a MultiPRO system. So at that point, it depends on, what kind of fuel are you using? Are you using propane? Are you using natural gas? What are you paying for that fuel? And actually to be able to find that balance point as to effectively which one is more efficient at what specific outdoor temperatures, there's a lot of math involved in there, or a lot of investigation that needs to be done to be able to determine. So you're already going to gain a huge amount of efficiency savings by being able to have that dual fuel capability, having the heat pump, having that gas furnace. And I'm just going to leave it up to you guys in your own expertise as to, looking at the expanded ratings of the MultiPRO system and the heat output you're getting off of it and making your own determinations as to when you want that gas furnace to take over. Then also it's staging. Again, that's another thing within the thermostat. You can set up a differential in most of your thermostats so that when you got to set it up for dual fuel, your heat pump is going to be the first system to run. And then if for some reason we go to auxiliary, the heat pump has to shut down, the gas furnace takes over, and there's a differential you can set there. You can set it to be a 0.5 degree, a degree, 2 degrees, depends on your thermostat. How far do you want that temperature to fall where if the heat pump wasn't keeping up, that the gas furnace would just automatically take over? So all of that is in your setup of the thermostat. Now, the other thing you got to keep in mind too, and be very careful of, is especially if you're on propane, and I say this a lot with electric heat, the idea is to run the heat pump. So if you make large temperature demands, like say the client sets the temperature down to 60 degrees because they like it really cool at night when they're sleeping, and then they get up in the morning, and by program or manually doing it, right, run that temperature all the way up to 70 degrees, you have just overridden your differential, and you're going to bring on that gas furnace, instead of bringing on that heat pump. And it may very well be that the heat pump at that whatever outdoor temperature is significantly more efficient to run at that point. So a lot of your better thermostats too actually have where you can go in there and put a delay timer in it. In other words, that second stage of heat or auxiliary heat will not kick in until a certain time period is elapsed to force the heat pump to do all the heating when you're coming out of a setback like that. So again, with heat pumps, and I stress this in the wind, heat pumps do a better job of maintaining temperature. So throughout the day, set it, leave it alone. We don't want temperature differentials in it. The thing's going to maintain a whole lot better. You're not burning the fossil fuel. I mean, if they want to adjust temperature a little bit, a couple degrees, but don't make the huge demands on it, because when you're using gas heat, you're burning the fossil fuel. You're going to recuperate really quick. With a heat pump, you're transferring heat, so it's not going to happen as quickly, even though the MultiPRO systems do recuperate very quickly. It's not the same as burning the fossil fuel. So, James, you got anything you want to add to that, or?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that we've had a lot of experience in selling in the Great White North. No offense, guys up there, but we've had a lot of experience over the last few years selling these styles of equipment up there, and there's a lot of customer habits that we've had to kind of wrap our head around too. I mean, I know we've talked about it a lot before. I know we've talked about it a lot on Talking Company Live other times, but the set back versus set it and forget it type attitude. I know that with traditional equipment, the way we've always thought about these things, and maybe not us as heating and air people, but just general consumers, the way we've always thought about these things is the only way to save money on these is to have them off or have them come on less or something along those lines. People leaving them, turning them down to 60 during the day and then wanting to play 2 hours with the catch up, or whatever. I mean, I think that's where we've kind of went mentally when we're talking about sizing equipment and all that. We look at these heat loss calculations and excuse me, we look at these heat loss calculations and we say, well, those are bunk or whatever. Let's go ahead and throw this, enormous furnace on it or whatever, because you got that catch up time. Well, I know that customer habits are sometimes hard to break. I think we all know that. But like Greg is saying with the time delay on kicking in auxiliary or time delay on kicking in the gas furnace, for example, those can help not break those habits, but limit those habits, because we know that the consumer habit can come right back on us. Right? We say, oh, yeah, you buy this system. It's the top of the line. It's going to save you money. It's going to save you money in the summer. It's going to save you money in the winter. You explain to them all the things, how it works, the ultra heat capacity, all that stuff, right? And then they go and try to use it just like they would have every other piece, all the other furnaces that they've ever used. And then they call you the first month and go, I thought you said this was going to save me money. Well, the heat pump really didn't get its chance to run. It's been running gas furnace for if you're doing that catch up, like, setting it cold at night, setting it cold during the day while you're at work, that kind of thing. And you got 8 hours of its runtime has been spent hauling butt, for 8 hours. Well, you might as well just have a regular heat pump at that point, or a regular furnace at that point,
So it's kind of like a 2024 brand new car versus driving a 1969 Camaro is probably going to be a little different how you drive it and the features that are on the vehicle.
A little bit. I mean, if you're talking about efficiency, I mean, there's a bunch of different bunch of companies, bunch of different organizations that have run, energy models on these things, and the savings that you end up getting by setting it back are at best often negligible. In my own experience on the commercial side of things, the energy models that we used at a previous company said that it actually cost them money it was on a school, and it cost them money to set a setback on these VRF systems versus just running them like normal. I mean, maybe a couple degrees, something like that. But if you're like effectively turning them off overnight and then trying to catch up in the morning, like in this one that I can think of, it took 4.5 hours for it to catch up in temperature. So it was running full bore for 4.5 hours. So they had to have it come on, because the school's going to be open at 7 or whatever. They had to have it come on at 2:30 in the morning in order for it to catch up in time.
Right.
Is
And that's
that,
what I've
that
said
saving
that.
money? No, it's not saving money at all.
I go back 20 years ago when I was still in the field. I had them conversations with consumers constantly because the big thing was having a programmable thermostat and having setback. And, people would want to, in cooling modes, because it's essentially the same thing. In cooling mode, they're wanting to do like a 10-degree setback because they're at work all day. Well, I'm like, okay, well, when you walk into the door, well, 5 o'clock. Well, right in the heat of the day, you're telling this machine to catch up 10 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So just like you're saying, that thing's going to run for 2 hours plus to catch back up. And chances are you wouldn't have had two hours of runtime the entire day,
Right. Well, and that's
maintaining
the
that
thing.
temperature.
I remember thinking of it this way, but if I had a 3-ton air conditioner and I'm trying to catch up at 3:30 in the afternoon, I'm thinking, okay, I'm absorbing 3 tons worth of cooling out of that interior space. You're not. That's not how it's rated. It's rated at 95 outside, but it's also rated at what inside? When am I getting 3 tons inside? 75 is when I'm getting 3 tons. Now you were derating it on indoor temperature and outdoor temperature at that point. It's the same thought process on the heat pump side of it. It's not that you're getting, like, out of 120,000 BTU furnace, you're getting 120,000 BTUs, doesn't matter what temperature it is. Right? Doesn't matter what temperature it is at all. But out of a heat pump, you're going to derate because of outside temperature. You will also derate because of inside temperature. The larger that extreme is, the longer it's going to take to catch up.
Right.
So effectively what that means is I can run at a much higher efficiency just maintaining my temperature than I would ever get out of trying to catch up.
Well, and I guess that's the other thing we need to make mention of here is you're talking also inverter-driven equipment. Well, inverter-driven equipment is most efficient at maintaining temperature and having that compressor running the lower hertz to maintain that temperature. If you're constantly running the inverter unit at full hertz, as fast as that machine will go, you're not saving much money at that point. The idea is for it to temperature at that low hertz.
Right. Well, maybe if I'm doing a catch-up portion, the only time I'm saving money in that cycle is when I get closer to set point to slow down.
Right. Exactly.
That's it.
All right. So
I
think
really good question.
that was a great question, and it brings in.
I prefer. I mean, on the whether or not use the set, the outdoor temperature. Oh yeah, there was one more point I wanted to make about that. I know there's been a couple codes. I could have sworn that these were misinterpreted codes, but somebody sent me a screenshot of the code, and it was basically that if you have a dual system, in order to get certain kind of rebates or whatever, it has to turn the heat pump off at a certain outdoor temperature, which I don't know what the purpose of that is. If you're talking about traditional, as a seal, you're no longer getting the kilowatt in versus kilowatt out. So it would be cheaper to use natural gas or whatever. Maybe that's the purpose of the rebate. But basing those rebates on, heat pumps that are rated at 47 degrees, that are 100% at 47, not 60 degrees colder than that, 100%. That's what they're. But if you got to do what you got to do in order to get the rebate, I totally get it.
Yep.
You do with that information what you will. All right. So anything else on that?
No, I think it brings up. It's just not a simple question to answer. So there was a lot to discuss. Be mindful of when we're installing the equipment, setting up the thermostat, and making sure the homeowner understands how the system most efficiently operates and also keeps them comfortable.
Right.
So
I can go ahead and do the next question.
Okay.
Does this system work on R32 or 454 refrigerant? This coil is 410. We will only be moving to R32. We won't be moving, using R454. If you want to see or hear a lot of the thoughts and stuff that we've already had on that, please refer to our episodes, particularly Talking Covered Live. We got those on YouTube. Got clips of them all over the place. So check that out. But yeah, GREE is R32. The next one are the coils charged with R410A? I
No,
believe that reference to the the Flex A coils.
they just got nitrogen in them. As you've seen in the video, they're just braze capped, so there's no
Right.
refrigerant in those coils.
So these will just be nitrogen charged then.
So as far as back to the question about the R32 refrigerant, so once we move to with R32 and with to coil fuel coil that will work with the MultiPRO systems, which is going to entail it needing that leak detection sensor on the coil, which will have to be incorporated into that control box so that we get the right shutdown features if for some reason it detects a leak.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we're still running forward because we've got plenty of time with the sell-through all of next year to keep selling 410A equipment. And that's why we went ahead and brought in the 410A dual fuel capable coils so we can set up equipment. So again, like we keep telling you guys, hit that ask a question button so that we can get you involved and get your questions answered about the equipment. One of the questions I expected to come up that did not come up that I want to make sure you're aware of. So the 2 and 3 ton coils are 17.5 inches wide and 21.25 inches deep. And 4 and 5 ton coils are 24 inches wide, 24.5 inches wide and 20.25 inches deep. So one thing you want to be very mindful of, if you are doing a 3 ton application, 4 ton application, 5 ton application, 2 ton application, if that coil doesn't sit on the furnace properly, let's say the furnace is bigger or smaller, you absolutely need to do a transition from the furnace to the coil so that we make sure we distribute the air from coming off that furnace through that entire coil. Don't use closed off plates is what I'm telling you. I've seen so many really bad pictures of our coil sitting on top of a furnace and they got it shifted all the way to one side, a piece of sheet metal on the other side. The one gain you're going to get from that, as we've said, the MultiPRO system is going to probably maintain your heating load throughout the winter, and you're not going to be running the gas furnace very long. So you probably won't lose or have a cracked heat exchanger in that cell that you blocked off. But if you do decide to run that gas furnace a lot and you're blocking off that plate and you're blocking your airflow right above that furnace, right at that heat exchanger tube, you're going to end up with a cracked heat exchanger. So it's very important that we distribute the air leaving the furnace through the coil properly. And if you don't have an exact fit, then you're going to have to field make a transition fitting to make sure you're transferring that air through the entire coil. Shouldn't be that big a deal for most of you guys installing them, but just kind of a heads up, we're only offering them in 17.5 inch wide for the 2 and 3 ton and the 24.5 inch wide for 4 and 5 ton. Just kind of an FYI. Well, looks like we got another question come in. You want to answer that, James?
Yeah, I can go ahead and read it. I do have that much education. In some northern states, the electric company shuts off the electricity to the heat pump to conserve electricity. Are GREE controllers ready for this?
Well, I'm glad they brought that up because the next video that we're going to play is on the new GREE controller. And I think it's going to answer those questions. So let's table that question until after we run the next video here on the new wired controller. And then we'll double back to that question.
We have a new GREE controller that I want to talk about for the MultiPRO systems, whether it be the standard or the MultiPRO Ultra. With the development of this new controller. Unfortunately, what I don't have for you yet is the part number that it's going to be. That should be coming out shortly. We'll be having an announcement about this new GREE controller. But the advantage to this controller, what we were after here is getting better control of electric heat. With this new controller, you'll be able to do that. You will now have your heat function, just like you did before with the other GREE controllers with the MultiPRO heat pump, but you're also going to have an emergency heat function, and you're also going to have auxiliary heat function. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that first, because it seems like there's a lot of confusion in the industry between what emergency heat is and what auxiliary heat is. Emergency heat is exactly that, and meaning if the heat pump is dysfunctional for whatever reason, whether it's a MultiPRO heat pump or any other heat pump, if that thing's out on air code, can't defrost properly, whatever the case may be, the emergency heat function gives us the ability to set it to emergency heat, or GREE likes to call it E-heat function. By putting it in E-heat function, then the heat pump no longer functions until that gets serviced and repaired and fixed. The E-heat function gives them the ability to still have heat in the house, running just the electric heat until the serviceman gets there to fix it. Auxiliary heat is exactly that. It's auxiliary to the heat pump. So for auxiliary heat to work properly, the way that works is heat pump is heating. That's your first stage of operation. It's heating home. Let's say it gets cold enough out there, which we all know with the MultiPRO Ultra, it's got to get very cold before the heat pump's not keeping up. But even so, let's say you're up in our northern climates and we get some really sub-zero temperatures and wind chills and everything else, and the heat pump slips a little bit and it can't keep up anymore. The auxiliary heat function, exactly that. It will automatically bring on the electric heat and help the heat pump out. With this controller, we have the ability to set it up in two different ways. You can get it to set it up to where it will finish the heat call with the auxiliary heat. Once the auxiliary heat calls for, it will finish the call. In other words, it will not shut off the electric heat until the thermostat is completely satisfied. Or you can set it up to where it does not satisfy the thermostat completely. So in other words, basically the first stage or the second stage gets satisfied, electric heat drops off, heat pump stays on. Let's say the temperature drops a little bit again, then the auxiliary heat comes back on, and then that part of it gets satisfied, goes back to running the heat pump, and it can just keep cycling like that, keeping that heat pump running the entire time, somewhat maintaining the temperature with a little help, okay? Like I said, you have the option set up either way. You can make it just satisfy the thermostat and shut the whole system down, or you can set it up to where auxiliary heat only cycles in when it needs to. Now, in order for this controller to work, it has to have electric heat in it already. The controller is automatically going to detect whether or not it has electric heat in it. But there is some setup options too that we need to be aware of. So we'll jump right into that. We'll go through some of these setup options. So again, like I said, I don't know if I said it or not, but just so you know, this was a prototype. That's why I don't have a part number for you. But the setup's going to be fairly the same, but you will get a manual if for some reason I tell you to go to parameter settings instead of project parameter or something like that. The new controller will have the proper instructions to get you into the right menu to get to the settings I'm talking about. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into that. So we go to menu, hit it one time. You can use the right or left arrow keys, go to set. We'll go here, and you'll have your typical settings that you have with a GREE wired controller. And then the parameter settings. So this is set up as master wired controller, master indoor unit, use remote, which means you can set this thing up where you can still use the remote along with the wired controller, or you can say, no, I don't want the remote to be able to function. Prior operation. I wouldn't worry about that so much. High ceiling installation is not really going to apply to an air handler. Link to fresh air, that's only for a fresh air kit. So a lot of these menu stuff that I'm telling you here, I can tell you we've already changed the whole menu structure because we've changed it so that you're only getting to the ones that really mean something to you, to us in the States. There's a lot of options in these controllers and we don't necessarily use them all. So, and really, as far as those parameter settings go, I'm not going to get into all that with this Tech 90 because we've kind of already covered that in other segments, you know, as far as other settings to the controllers. We didn't really change any of that. We just might have changed the location on the menu. I'm primarily getting to the electric heat part of it. Let me get there. Auxiliary heat available or not, yes or no. Like I said, if you got electric heat, that's going to automatically populate yes. If for some reason it don't, it should at least give you that and you can set it. Space temperature differential. So it's kind of a weird setting for you. And if you notice I'm going up and down with the arrow buttons, that's because these things time out rather quickly and you're going to lose your page. So if you don't want to lose your page and you're trying to focus on something, just keep hitting up and down or left and right and it'll keep you there until you're ready to move on. So anyway, what that differential is, that's basically your differential between your first and second stage. So right now I've got it set to 1, and you can go between 1 and 10. So basically you can have this set up to where you've got a 1 degree differential between the heat pump running. If we slip another degree, then it's going to bring on the electric heat. If it don't slip that degree, it's not going to bring on the auxiliary heat. As we go down a little further, auxiliary heat on timer, 0 minutes, you can set that from 0 to 60. Meaning, you could actually set this up that, say you got an older person like me, because I am getting old, right? And we inherently like to go to the thermostat and say, I'm cold, and we turn the temperature way up. Well, they're kind of defeating the purpose of having a heat pump, especially if it's 40 degrees outside. So what you can do with that timer is set it to 10 minutes. You can go 0 to 60. So let's say you set it at 15 minutes. So even though it called for auxiliary heat because we got a 1 degree differential because it was 60 degrees in the house, we set it at 70. We gave it a 10 degree differential. It's not going to bring on the electric heat for at least 15 minutes. It's got to elapse that timer before the auxiliary heat kicks in. That's what that means. Or you can just have it as simply as 0 minutes, and every time you're within 1 degree of your set point, if you're above that, you're going to, or below that I should say, then you're going to bring on the electric heat. We also have the satisfy room temperature with auxiliary heat. Again, I already kind of talked about that. You can set this to yes or no. Just remember when you change the setting, after you change it, once I set it to yes, I have to hit menu. And then if you see, I'll go back to it, it still says yes. If I go to no, and then I save it, and then I go away from it and go back to it, it should still say no, and it does. Okay, so you got to save it after you set it, just so you know. So there's your 3 settings you got to set. That's all there is to it. And then we can go back to the main screen. Now, and the controller doesn't come set up for eHeat function, and they should have it set up for you, or I'm sorry, not set up for you, but in the installation instructions. So if you have electric heat available, again, only on an air handler, when you first power it up, before you even turn it on, you hold the menu and power for at least 5 seconds, and it'll say setting is done. That means you now have the eHeat function, or eHeat mode, I should say. It doesn't come out of the box with eHeat mode. You have to enable eHeat mode. So now let me turn it on. So you can see I got eHeat mode. So now I can crank this up, and I should be able to get my electric heat to come on. There it goes. In a minute here, I should see amp draw. There we go. So about 19 amps. We're on 208, so it's going to be 18, 19 amps. Then if I run my temperature down, I should be able to get it to cycle off. And it also says right up here at the top, it says aux on, aux off, or not aux off, it just says aux on. So whenever the electric heat's running, whether it's E-heat or auxiliary heat, it will tell you the aux is on. I'll show you that one more time. Let me turn it back on. So the other thing that we gained while we're waiting on that for a minute, the other thing we gained with this, and I've tested this myself, even if I lose power to my outdoor unit, which normally would give you a communication error code, and you lose all function of the GREE MultiPRO unit. You will lose all function to the GREE MultiPRO unit. But as long as that blower motor can still work and the board is still good, you will still have E-heat function. Again, it might be because I cycled it so quick. It's probably got a delay in it. But we'll give it a minute, see if it don't kick back in here. And then I also want to demonstrate that it'll work with the power off. I'll just kill the power to the outdoor unit. What I can't demonstrate for you, or I'm not going to demonstrate for you in this video, is the auxiliary heat function. Because then you got to have the heat pump running, and then the temperature's got to be within a degree or whatever, however the differential we set, and bring on the electric heat as well. The only reason why I'm not doing that, as you can well see here, I don't have this thing refrigerantly piped up yet. So once we get an air handler set up in here, and a couple other indoor units, we're going to do have a fully functional system where I can run the heat pump and then be able to bring on the electric heat. I will have all that where I can demonstrate it. It does work, I know that, because I got it on my own system at home. So meanwhile, while I'm waiting on that, I'm going to kill the breaker. So as you can see, I just turned the power off to that MultiPRO unit this is hooked to. I'm still functional in the heat mode. So then also to kind of recap a little bit too. So if you don't have electric heat in the air handler, you cannot, the controller will not recognize that it has electric heat. It will not let you say it has electric heat. And you cannot enable the E-heat mode. So you'll have a heat mode and E-heat mode. Heat mode would be heat pump, temperature differential. Once you meet your temperature differential and your timer, if you set a timer on there, then the auxiliary heat will come on with the heat pump. And then the other mode you have is E-heat mode. If for some reason you're out on air code or anything like that, you can go to your mode settings, change it to E-heat, set the temperature, and you're good to go. There we go. She's on. As I said, it shows auxiliary on. So I didn't time that, but I would say it's probably close to 5 minutes. Now I didn't time it, you know, it's got to be at least 5 minutes off. Because as you've seen when I first did it, electric heat came on right away. But once you cycle it off, it cycles back on, it's going to have a 5-minute delay. So now I'll run this back down. We should be able to lose our auxiliary heat call. So we lost it. We also lost the amp draw. So whatever the blower time delay off is, which I'm not even sure how long that is, it did slow down a little bit. And then that'll cycle off. So again, look for the announcements coming out. I'm hoping October somewhere in October, hopefully before November, we will have these new controls available, and we'll have an announcement about that coming out real soon. So again, I don't have the part number yet or the model number of the controller. Again, these are prototypes, so, but we were able to get the prototype, make sure it all worked, and GREE did an absolute fabulous job of making these controllers work the way we wanted them to control the electric heat, to make it very much like any other heat pump that I've ever dealt with in my entire career. They've always had an emergency heat function. They've always had an auxiliary heat function. And even if that heat pump was out on air code, it shouldn't be affecting my electric heat capabilities of my indoor unit. And with this new control, we will have that. So there was a little bit of hesitation with some buyers that not having the electric heat function, and if the heat pump should go down, they don't have that backup feature that they were used to. So there was some hesitation to buying the MultiPRO equipment because of that. So with this, that's going to resolve that issue. And then even if that heat pump goes out on an air code, you still got electric heat until you can get somebody out there. Now, I will say, you know, our downtimes to the MultiPRO units have not been bad. Normally, when they're down, you know, a guy can get out there and get it back up and running fairly quickly. But I can also understand the concern from consumers out there that live up in the northern states, especially, that are, you know, it's not uncommon for them to have minus 31-degree wind chills, you know, and having that backup peace of mind is huge. So we realized that, and with GREE, giving GREE a little help, they realized it and were able to come up with the controls we needed to just make it a better product. That's the whole thing here, and I think you guys are going to be happy with it because you're going to get some excellent inverter heat pump operation out of the MultiPRO unit, but you're not losing anything that you had from previous heat pumps you've ever dealt with. You will still have full electric heat capability. Now, again, if a blower motor goes down or the board goes out, well, that's any heat pump. You can't run electric heat without blower function, so you're still going to need parts for that. You can't, you know, but the outdoor unit, I agree with everybody's out there. That shouldn't have anything to do with whether or not I can bring that thing on electric heat. So with that, we'll move right on into questions and see if we can answer any questions you guys might have about the new wire controller. Just don't ask the question of what the part number is or the model number is yet, because I don't know yet. As quick as we get that information, it will be announced, and there will be a broadcast put out to all distribution as to what the new controller and its capabilities. So, with that, let's get to questions.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that video on that new controller and controlling the electric heat. I'm pretty sure I covered everything in there. If I didn't, or if you got any questions, please, hit that ask a question icon, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. But with that controller, like I was showing there in the video, it gives you the ability to, set your differentials from 1 to 10 degrees, I believe it was. And, it'll automatically bring on that auxiliary heat should that MultiPRO system need some help. Hopefully that's only going to be happening in our much northern climates where we're getting down to some really, really cold temperatures. But it also gives the thing that I really like the most of that we didn't have before with electric heat as backup is the fact that regardless of whether that heat pump's down on any air code or lost power to the heat pump, it doesn't matter. You will still have the ability to run electric heat and see your set points and everything until the heat pump problem is addressed. So it really brings the MultiPRO system now in there, you know, as far as electric heat functionality, right in line with what you are currently or should currently be used to with electric heat as auxiliary or used as emergency heat in a traditional heat pump that you've probably dealt with for years. So, and that's what was our goal there, was so that, you know, the consumer can be confident that even if that heat pump would go down, they're still going to have a source of electric heat, provided that indoor board is good and the indoor blower is good. And that's pretty much with any system. If your blower motor's out, you're not going to have any heat. Whether it's a gas furnace, electric air handler, doesn't matter. If you have a circuit board problem, you're not going to have any heat, just like a gas furnace or any other air handler. So that puts us right in line with our competition, put it that way. So, James, you got anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you pretty well covered it.
I'm really excited to see that, you know, and we went through some big efforts with GREE to making sure this controller was developed the way we needed to be developed. And
yeah, we spent, yeah, I mean, honestly, it was Greg and I, we spent many hours you know, going over the order of the like different settings, or you know, grouping the data that makes sense to a technician, like taking the EEV pulses, the inlet temperature sensor, the outlet temperature sensor, you know, placing those, making sure they're all on the same page. So, you know, you could take a look at that. You know, you could use that from a troubleshooting standpoint. We placed some settings that I know for a fact you wouldn't want your end users getting to very often. You know, they've got like, you know, it's like a secret menu, but you know, something that's not too hard. It's not something you got to have to remember or anything like that. But you know, we did spend a lot of time on it, translating a lot of stuff, you know, and we've been really happy with the amount of effort that the factory was able to put into that for us. So, you know, we felt like if you know, if we had a hard time understanding something, we would have assumed that other people would have a hard time or you know, understanding it as well. You know, we spend hours and hours every day looking at the manuals that we have and the, you know, and all that stuff. So sometimes it can be, you know, kind of difficult to understand some of it. So, you know, we got everything translated, you know, use common terminology. Well, but yeah, I think you guys will be really happy with it.
Well, so the one thing I can attest to too, because well before this actually went into production, I had one of the prototypes sent to me, and I was able to hook it up to my system. And I live in Tennessee, so I was able to hook it up to my system and make sure it all functioned the way we asked it to function. And I also last winter, obviously I don't get near as cold as it happens up in the northern states, but we had some unseasonable temperature for Tennessee, and we were all the way down to 0 for several days. And that MultiPRO system held temperature in this house without any backup heat at all. But it was nice to know that, you know, if for some reason there was a problem with the system, I could at least bring on the electric heat in that air handler to at least help temper the air. It wouldn't be enough to heat the whole house, because I've got wall mounts on this system as well, and that system's not big enough to heat the whole house. So
Right.
It's really more for the living room and dining room and kitchen and stuff like that. But having that ability to be able to have that backup heat is kind of reassuring. So, but I also want part of the reason I brought this up too was because of that auxiliary heat timer that we talked about in the video, that you can set from anywhere from 0 to 60 minutes. So if it goes to bring on auxiliary, it is timed out for that time. So I can tell you right now, mine, it's set at 60 minutes, because I don't want my wife going in there and cranking the temperature way up and bringing on the electric heat in the air handler, because I know she will. This will force her to have to wait for the heat pump to gain that 10 degrees that she wants. So, and I'm just being funny, but that's the purpose behind it, is so that you have these people that, you know, want to turn it down to 60 degrees while they're sleeping at night, and they get up in the morning and go crank the thermostat way up. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to bring on that electric heat, because you're probably going to beat your differential unless you set it at 9 degrees. You're going to beat that differential, and you're going to be bringing on the electric heat, and you're going to be running up your electric bill. So, you know, that keeps that from happening. So if I set that at 60 minutes, that means I got a 60-minute runtime for that heat pump to catch up before it's ever going to let that electric heat come on.
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea behind it. So it's kind of dual purpose. I mean, we had the temperature differential in there. James is the one that came up with the idea of putting the timer in behind it, and I like the feature, and it makes sense. So glad we added it in there. So
yeah, well, I mean, I just like to give the heat pump a chance to do its business. You know, I mean, if it takes a couple of minutes for it to ramp up and speed up and heat up and all that, you know, giving it an opportunity to do that before you bring on the electric heat, get that meter spinning and all that. I mean, I think that's going to serve. I mean, it's going to prevent you from getting that phone call. You know, you from getting that phone call going, hey, you know, my power bill is X amount this month and all that, and then having to go through the habits and how they use it and all the rest of this stuff. You know, hooking up your gauges and, you know, telling them, oh yeah, you know, it seems to be working okay, let me change some settings, you know, having to come up with some stuff that you did. Instead, what this will do is prevent it from you know, just somebody with some shaky fingers, you know, costing them $5 a cycle, you know, or whatever.
well, in my experience, and when I was out in the field running service, which is quite a few years ago now, but yeah, so when you turned on a heat pump and you walk around the house, back in the time that I was running service, we had the meter to actually spin the dial. And then you go in there and you crank it up, you bring on the electric heat, and you go out and watch that dial. That thing's like, it looks like a windmill in Iowa.
Yeah. Well, you can't even tell it has a black mark on it anymore. It's just
There's a huge difference in the power consumption there. So, by all, you know, and I can tell you, even years ago when I was running service, I was always big into heat pumps, and it was amazing to me how many homes out there, very nice homes, that were built with all electric and no heat pump, and their only source of heat was electric heat. And I'm like, oh my God, you need to put it in a heat pump system. So I'd sell them a new system and put in a heat pump. Now we're talking conventional heat pumps. They weren't even inverter driven yet. And you know, I'd go back for maintenance, or even when the machine went down, you know, maybe it was installed for 3 or 4 years, and I'd go out there and it'd be broke, and whether it was a contactor or a compressor, it didn't matter. These people, I was like God to them. They didn't care what it was going to take to fix that heat pump, because they knew how much money they were saving versus running just that electric furnace. So that repair bill was no big deal, because they knew how much they're saving from that machine. So now you bring that into today's world versus running straight electric heat to running inverter driven heat pump like the MultiPRO, and the capabilities of that machine. Oh my God, I think I'd be more than just God to them. I think I'd be more like a saint. So, you know, it's an exciting times that we're in with heat pumps that are able to do what the MultiPRO system can do.
Right.
I wish they were out when I was still running service. The performance off of these is far more than I ever dreamed a heat pump could do.
right. Well, I mean, I appreciate you saying that. Just want to remind everyone that Greg is not a salesman. He's not. I promise, he's not. I am now, but you know, Greg is not. I don't. You know, we don't pay him extra to say those things. We didn't pay him extra to get one in his house either. Nobody paid me to put mine in my house. I don't have any electric heat in mine. But yeah, I mean, I've been happy with them. I mean, I think it's like a piece of equipment for people who are really into this. It really, I mean, that's honestly, I think that's the best way for me to describe it. I mean, if you really care about heating and air, you like technology, that kind of thing, this is the kind of system. It's for you. I had a lot of
And James is right. I'm not in sales. I get no benefit from being, talking sales, but I do like quality equipment. I do like equipment that performs very well. And jumping on board with MultiPRO, I'm still just amazed at what these machines will do. So, and the
I am
amount of
too.
money
I mean,
they
I
save.
look forward to it every year. I know I've talked about enough about being called a nerd at home, but every chance I get, if it's real hot, real cold, anything like that, I'm out there taking a look, seeing how it's running, looking at the data, that kind of thing.
And we have testimonials of equipment in Ohio area and then other areas holding temperature at -6, -4, and no auxiliary heat helping those machines at all.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen that with standard MultiPRO equipment.
Exactly.
I know of some MultiPRO units that have been in for, I'd say, about 6, 7 years, up in South Dakota, that have not had electric heat and never put in the electric baseboard. They've had one service call, and it was the fact that they hadn't cleaned the wall mount units in 6 years, so they were pretty dirty, uh, of course, right? But yeah, I'm still I know how they work. Greg knows how they work. It still seems like magic sometimes. But let's see.
So
Questions here.
I know the one thing I didn't share in that video, and I apologize for not being prepared, but I will have it in just 1 second. What the new model number to that controller will be. It's going to be XE7C-23H. I'll repeat that again. It's an XE7C-23H. So we had the XE7 controller already. This is a revision to that controller. So whether you have electric heat in your air handler or not, the new controllers we're getting in will be capable of, controlling electric heat like this.
Yeah.
Right? So in other words, we're not going to stock both. We're only going to be stocking the latest XE7 control that is going to be capable of doing the electric heat as shown in this video. So as far as the way that controller looks, the outside of it and everything else, it looks identical to an XE7C we've already been selling as an accessory. So I think that was pretty much all the questions.
Yeah, that's all the questions. Yeah.
I really would have thought we'd have got more questions, but maybe that just means I did a really good job with the video.
Yeah, maybe they all hopped off and they're out there. Maybe they didn't even sign off. Maybe they just hopped out there and they're out there trying to sell it already. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is.
That could be. So with that, I want to thank everybody for participating in today's broadcast. If you had to step away for a bit, or if you would like to go back and revisit any of the training today, we'll have it posted on our YouTube channel at GREE Comfort. So we go to YouTube, you go to @GREE Comfort, and you'll be able to see this video. But the other thing, the biggest thing I want to shout out to also, to join our next live broadcast on November 13th. That is going to be covering the R32 GREE Flex Ultra. And then we're also going to have a MultiPRO system design and installation of the MultiPRO systems. So we'll probably talk more about, just the layout of equipment and stuff like that, things to be mindful about on the installation and everything. Also, I want to give a big shout out to something that we finally got done that we wanted to get done. So if you go to greecomfort.com and you go under MultiPRO, under the system documentation, we now have a quick start guide for MultiPRO, so that you don't have to read through every bit of the installation instructions. This is going to give you more of the pertinent information you need when you go to install a MultiPRO system. So if you haven't had a chance to look at our quick start guide, I highly encourage you to go out and look at that, because I think it'll be beneficial to anybody that's doing a system, or especially somebody that's never done a system. So be sure to continue to refer to our training calendar page on greecomfort.com, as we will update upcoming trainings as they are scheduled for the fall. So, and very soon, within the next month or so, we should be getting our training calendar put together for January 2025 and through our spring training, so you guys can plan for that as well. So with all of that, we thank you again for joining us, and remember, agree, we're by your side.